Hello friends, and welcome back to the Hall of Craft! So, many of you may have noticed my guild build entry for the September guild build challenge for the Tabletop Crafters Guild. I built Chisilla the spider dragon, and link in the top right if you missed that video. So, a couple weeks ago, my players actually encountered Chisilla the spider dragon in my D&D campaign, and I, in the week leading up to that session, I was scratching my head about what the terrain was going to look like, what the table was going to look like. I didn't really have any extra webbing or spider stuff that I could add, and I figured that's a problem I could solve. So I was going to take the techniques that I used to build the base in that video and roll it out and make some extra terrain pieces. So that's what this is. I'm making eggs and I'm making cocoons so that I can cover my board, or I could cover my board, with all kinds of spider nonsense. So let's just jump right into that and I'll show you how to do it. So for this build, Sculpey is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm just going to use it to make the forms of the eggs, forming it in my hands like clay and just rolling it into balls and then kind of making them a little more oval shaped. I have a few 2-inch cork bases left over from a previous batch. Link to my cork bases video in the top right if you're interested in making some for yourself. Once I've made enough eggs, I'm going to use a mini for scale, and I'm going to form some stalks out of Sculpey as well. These are going to be the base to represent a cocooned prey that has been captured by the spiders. To base these, I'm just going to use a few Canadian nickels that I have laying around. The Sculpey already has some pretty good weight to it, but these will help weigh it down even more so it doesn't topple over on the table. After I have the eggs and stalks formed, I'm going to toss them on a baking tray and then bake them for like 15 minutes or so. Just following the instructions on the back of the Sculpey box, basically. Okay, so once I have those finished and they're all cooled down, I'm going to start gluing them to the bases. For this, I'm just going to use a small amount of super glue. Any other glue will just peel right off the metal, and we don't want that. So super glue is our choice here. Another bonus of the super glue is that we can add a little extra to the bases and then sprinkle some baking soda and rocks onto it while it's still wet. This will help it dry super fast, and it also looks pretty good, adds some extra texture to the bases, so it's a win-win situation. Once that's all set, I'm going to base coat these with black craft paint. No need to do the black magic base coat as I often do for these because it's pretty much Sculpey and super glue. It's already rock solid, nothing's going to be moving around, so there's no need to just hold it together with extra Mod Podge. Next, we're going to work on the stone texture. For this, I'm going to use a series of dry brushes, or overbrushes I suppose, starting with a dark taupe. After that, I'm just going to use a regular gray, and then for the highlights, I'm going to use a suede. Now that the stone is complete, I'm going to paint the eggs and the cocoons. For these, I'm going to paint them with a vanilla, which is basically an off-white, but like with minor yellow tones in it. So I'll base coat the whole thing in that, and then while it is still wet, I'm going to take some white and paint it onto the tops. So trying to, I guess, minorly wet blend a bit of a shadow into it. It works out pretty nicely. After everything is dried, I'm going to give everything a very generous coating of my homemade black wash. While the wash is still wet and before it sets, I'm going to take a wet brush and brush off the tops to make sure that nothing pools on the high areas of the eggs or cocoons. Here's what they look like when that's all dried off. One more detail I would like to add before I move on to the webs. I want the eggs to have some green tones to them, so I'm going to take my Citadel green wash and I'm going to use it to just paint the perimeter of the base of the eggs. This is a little tricky when they're kind of close together and touching each other, but it adds a really nice bit of color variation that helps them kind of pop and look a little more disgusting and vile. Now for the final step. I'm going to mix water and white glue, roughly 50-50 in a solo cup. There's no science to this. I'm just adding more glue or more water to try and get it to a consistency that I'm happy with. Once it feels right, I'm gonna start ripping off strands of pillow stuffing and kind of spreading them out a bit in my fingers and then dipping them into this concoction. Once it's totally soaking wet, you pull it out and then place it over top of the cocoons and wrapping it around and kind of holding it on itself, and then eventually doing the exact same technique onto the eggs as well. This looks absolutely insane while you're doing it because it's holding so much water and so much glue, and it's totally full and not transparent at all. It looks insane, but trust me, it dries totally clear and you can see through it and it looks just like webs. This is a bit of a leap of faith step, but it looks fantastic once it's done, so don't skip it. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to set them on baking trays and just leave them overnight to dry so that they don't stick to the bottom of my mat or anything like that. It's important to make sure that they're not sitting on anything that they're going to stick to. Get yourself a couple baking trays if you don't already. I have ruined a couple with paints and we'll never use them again for baking, but they're great for crafting and letting things dry, so definitely recommend doing that. So here's how it all turned out. I'm overall very happy with them. One thing that I didn't predict was the moisture of the glue reactivating the green wash and pulling it up into the webs. I wish I could say that I had planned that, but I didn't, so I can't really take credit for it, but it does look nice. I used these in my game last week and the players loved it. The board looked amazing. I'm very happy with the result, and I would highly recommend making some of these for yourself because spiders are a D&D classic and you're going to use them at some point, if just to creep out your arachnophobic players. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I have plenty of other crafting videos if you'd like to level up your terrain making game. Don't forget to hit the like button if you had a good time, and comment below, let me know what you think of these or if you have any ideas about how to improve them. I love what you guys have to say about all these crafts. This community is fantastic. I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great week.